Hello, and welcome back to Diabetics Doing Things. We're telling the amazing stories of people with diabetes from all over the world. And today, Eritrea and I are back in the booth. We're just going to get in here and cook up a little something, a little podcast on the fly. We were having a conversation via text yesterday, and we have a lot of updates from my side of things. Eritrea has a lot of updates as well. So we're just going to dig in and talk about that without a guest. So if you're looking for an inspirational interview with somebody, we've got plenty. We've done a lot of episodes recently, so feel free to check out some of those. But if you really want to know what's going on with me and what's going on with Eritrea and some of our thoughts about just general things, feel free to dig into this episode. It's going to be really exciting. I actually put a lot of thought and time and effort into answering some questions that you and I've been thinking about. So you ready to dig into it?
I would say we're digging deep today. It's going to get real emotional. Lots of tea, my favorite.
Yeah, nothing like some spillage of the tea. And when you were talking about emotional, I will say there is a content warning here because we're going to talk about some serious diabetes stuff, namely dead in the bed syndrome. So we have some content coming up on the podcast soon that addresses it, but we wanted to have this episode primarily just to introduce the concept, talk about uncomfortable things, because as we know, there are complications associated with diabetes and real risks. So if you're uncomfortable talking about dead in the bed syndrome, you can skip towards more the middle of this podcast because we're going to spend a good chunk of the beginning of this conversation about dead in the bed syndrome. So just a content warning for you guys. But first, what's up with Diabetics Doing Things? And like a little bit of background behind what we've been doing at DDT the last few months. I know a lot of you saw our announcement earlier in September about the North Texas Food Bank collaboration. Happy to report that that is live, and we're actually, we have a few people who've already interacted with our form and gotten in touch with our resources. And an interesting finding is that all the people thus far are over the age of 60. So as we think about, and I think this is really inspiring me to think differently about a lot of things, we're great at social media. We've done 250 plus podcasts. I'm, Mr. Takeover, Mr. Stories, Mr. Reels, whatever. And sometimes I forget that a lot of the people that live with diabetes are over the age of 60 and are not as, tech forward, not as comfortable, not as engaged on social media, but they need our help as well. So really kind of excited to dig into helping the people who have been living with diabetes for a long time, as well as people who have been recently diagnosed later in their life with autoimmune conditions like LADA, for example, and giving them and bringing them into the community, giving them some new information and hopefully some encouragement on how they can live their lives, a little bit better.
I think because we are people who are so on the internet, sometimes we forget not everybody is. And when we're talking about a community of people who are over the age of 55, and we want to make this information accessible to them because one day we will be over the age of 55, it's important that we're a little bit more intentional with it. So I'm really excited for this. I love our North Texas Food Bank collaboration. I'm such a lame-o. Every time I'm on vacation, I'm like talking about it with random people and they're just like, what is wrong with this girl? But I think it's important that we think about people with diabetes and what we can do to assist them instead of just constantly, putting the onus on them as patients.
I'm glad that you said that you're excited because I'm also excited. And I think, where excitement, what breeds excitement often is a good indicator that you should spend more time doing that. So working with the North Texas Food Bank on education, not only for the senior population, but also for the youth and for the families is something that we're going to be doing really, I don't know, until they tell us we can't do it with them anymore. So
yeah, until they kick us out.
Yeah, until they're like, guys, that's too much. But they haven't given us any indication that that's happening, and they've been great partners. And I'm really excited to continue to help people of North Texas and hopefully beyond as well. Because I've heard this said a few times, and I'm paraphrasing, but a society that doesn't care about its seniors or neglects its seniors truly is doomed. Because like you said, we will all be seniors someday. I already feel like a senior sometimes. We're going to talk a little bit about some TikToks later. I already feel, my senior years are coming on as these younger creators are doing their thing, and they're just a little bit more unhinged than I've ever been. And
oh my goodness.
I think, again, we've just got to make sure that we continue to deliver to the people who helped pave the way for where we are today. And I've said this before on the podcast, but we stand on the shoulders of giants who went before us, not just the bloggers of 10, 15 years ago and the people who had the first diabetes podcast and the first diabetes social media accounts, but also the people who were boiling syringes in 1960, who were using animal insulin, who only dreamt of a day where they could have a hybrid closed loop system or a continuous glucose monitor. So we can't take their struggle and the path work, or the groundwork that they laid for granted. So A, if you're a senior listening to this, thank you. And B, more cool stuff coming for you.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
I think that's part of what I want to cover in the next section, which is preparing for big evolutions at Diabetics Doing Things. We've done some pretty cool stuff over the past 7 years. We talked about the number of podcasts. I just got back from my second international trip from diabetes. I did all those speaking at JDRF and ADA and Beyond Type 1 events, met a ton of people in the community, and hopefully, walked away from some of those interactions feeling better about their life with diabetes than they went into them. But I think that there's a real opportunity for a company like us that is not a nonprofit, that is more on the content focused piece of things, to deliver practical applications for people with diabetes. And that is where that North Texas Food Bank collaboration falls. It's a practical application. It's simple technology. It wasn't expensive. It's easy to use. And it's mostly done on no-code platforms. So, we're not developers necessarily, but we can come up with an idea and solve it with technology in a way that's good for people with diabetes. And I think that there are a lot more opportunities for that in other areas as well. So that's kind of where we're shifting our focus at Diabetics Doing Things. We are going to continue to do the podcast. And for me personally, that is why we're here. And that's honestly what I bring to the table in terms of my best skill set. So we're going to keep potting. And
quit. If you get rid of the pod, I'm out.
yeah, we got to have the podcast. So we're going to continue to do that. But what we're also going to do is open up opportunities for people with diabetes to get paid for their art, for their content, for their passions, and also for their work. Even if you aren't an amazing artist or you're not a content creator, but you have a role that you can fill. We've got our job board live now. We're going to be hiring people at Diabetics Doing Things eventually. And if you just want to contribute your work to making life easier or making cool practical applications for people with diabetes, there's going to be opportunities for you. And I want Diabetics Doing Things to lead in that space. So more to come on that. Don't hold my feet to the fire for a deadline, but the zine earlier this year also was a really good test case for what type of effort that project takes. And spoiler alert, it was a ton. And
Rob
also
almost died. No, I'm gonna tell them. He really man's almost died. Like we started the project at the beginning of the year. We really wanted to get more than just one zine out, but after going through this amazing project with such amazing diabetic content creators, it was a little bit more of a labor of love than I think you expected it to be, because you were definitely burning that midnight oil.
Well, and you guys who have listened to this podcast for a long time know I am a guy that likes to do both. So if there's two options, how can we do both of them? That's what I'm going to try to do. And so with this one, I think with all the things in my professional life, with all the other responsibilities in Diabetics Doing Things and partnerships and the Rob Howe
having diabetes,
right? Wanting to be a good partner to my wife. It was a lot of stuff. I was definitely burning the candle at both ends. And, my sister told me something a couple of years ago that the brightest candle burns out the fastest. And I definitely felt that. And I also felt that you really can't pour from an empty cup. And so Eritrea and Ashley and my recreation employees have been dealing with me for the past week since I got back from vacation. And I'm moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour because my cup is filled. I was able to rest. I was able to get away. And now I'm psyched and motivated to get back to the work. So we're going to continue to do that. We're going to continue to create opportunities for people with diabetes. And I'm also going to manage my time and expectations a little bit more disciplined.
Yay.
So you can quote me on that.
Okay, good. I will hold to your feet to the fire. Also, we all could probably do a better job of managing our time responsibilities so that we could better serve ourselves. I know that's something that I am also struggling with. So yeah.
Yeah. So, we talk about it in jest that, I was that I was a literal skeleton walking around. But also it made me really ornery. And a lot of people, I think, were like, wow, why is Rob so angry all the time? And it's like,
I thought you were mad at me. I was like, why is he so mad at me? And Ashley was like, he's not, he's just stressed out.
Yeah. I think Ashley is always the barometer for how we're all doing. So that's good. Very grateful for her.
Our worst of reason. But yeah, lots happening with us. And I can't wait to see who else we get to work with these types of projects and what we get to bring to the table to the diabetes community. So
It's exciting times, change is coming. And, I think if you have stuck with us from day one, I just want to shout you out, and we're going to give you more opportunities to engage with us, and also get a few like membership badges and like some things like that are just fun, community focused, and really help us. We're built around diabetes, but it doesn't, your whole life doesn't have to be diabetes all the time.
Right.
And I have met some of my closest and awesome friends and collaborators from diabetes, but what we have in common so often is everything outside of it. So I want to really dig into that in the future as well.
While we're talking about community and the people that we've had on the pod, and just how much we want to bring to like practical solutions and solvable problems, we recently had a guest, and we'll probably put this episode out later, with Aaron Dodge. And I know we want to talk a little bit about dead in the bed syndrome in this segment. And I'm struggling to find the words. Help me, friend.
Well, of course. Yeah. So dead in the bed syndrome, first of all, the title definitely gets the point across. So I'm going to read you guys from Diabetes UK how they define dead in the bed syndrome. So the syndrome is characterized as when someone with insulin dependent diabetes has gone to bed seemingly perfectly fine and has been found dead in an undisturbed bed. So dead in the bed syndrome. From those statistics, they say that these deaths account for 6% of the T1 related deaths under the age of 40. So they made an estimation like the most common death for people with diabetes is from diabetic ketoacidosis. And that is estimated about 3% of the total population of people with type 1 diabetes. So again, this is just a segment, but 6% of people under the age of 40, according to the study, 6% of the deaths were from dead in the bed syndrome. So not an insignificant amount. And
I think the number, sorry to interrupt you, but that 6% might seem like a number. It's like, okay, whatever. But what if that person is you? Yeah. That number bugs me.
Something that I read during the early days of the COVID pandemic, when we were reporting on like daily deaths and like daily cases, is that in macro statistics about human life, our brains cannot process multiple deaths. So, and what I mean by that is the example that they gave was that when you say 30 people died in an accident, your brain sees that number, not necessarily the individuals. You don't have the ability to see 30 individuals. You can only see the number. But when someone says, oh, a close friend of you has passed away, or someone that you know has died, it's much easier for us to focus in on the loss because we see the person, not the number. So again, that back to those percentages, context is everything. So 6% of all the deaths of people with diabetes is a lot of deaths. So those are all individuals. And, for you personally, as somebody who's lived with diabetes for longer than I have, and also has known a lot more people in the diabetes community, as well as through Camp Sweeney, you have lost friends and mutual acquaintances to dead in the bed syndrome.
I've lost a lot of friends and a lot of mutual acquaintances to dead in the bed syndrome. It's really wild to think about, like being so normalized to death, almost like to the point where you don't plan for a future when you're a little kid, because so many people have passed from diabetes. It's hard. I think one of the first people that I knew passed was while I was at like Camp Sweeney. We were at it's a second session camp. She was supposed to come to camp. She didn't come to camp. And then while we were at the session, we found out that she had passed away. And it was really, really, really sad, but no one really explained to us like what happened, or that, I think later on there was like rumors of like drug use and alcohol and things like that, but that's still not a good reason to pass away from diabetes. And I think that when something like that happens, when you're like 11 years old, it just kind of like starts, and then it becomes a pattern, right? When like every year someone else passes away. So it's weird. I've always felt very blessed to know so many people with diabetes. But these last 2 years have been really, really difficult, because I think that the people that have passed away have been a little bit like closer to home for me. It has just been hard to deal with.
I'm very sorry for your loss. And I think you're right. Many people who were diagnosed, I think before a certain time, let's call that time like the year 2000. But even around there, maybe there's like a variance of 3 to 5 years. We're told that you will not live past a certain age, no matter what age they were. So I think when you talk about that relationship with death, it's for people with diabetes, it's sort of very real, right? And I think that they hear that probably far too often. We get introduced to the idea that, oh, if you take too much insulin and don't get enough carbs, you could pass away. And I think
Yeah.
that's just always the risk. Like we laugh about it on the meme diabetes community of like, oh, taking my 10-minute walk, better bring my supplies. And it's just this whole bag full of things. But even though it is funny, it's very real. You know, you caught without in the wrong situation, without the right things, you could really be in trouble from a severe low blood sugar.
I think it's funny to us because that's how we cope, right? I think that
True.
there's only one way to like understand the gravity of having something in your pocket that could literally kill you, because like if you overdose on insulin, like you absolutely will pass away. So it's like this idea that like I'm taking medication that is life-saving but could also kill me at the same time. So like how do we cope with that? We make jokes all the time, but then when things like someone actually passes away, it really hits home, especially like for me recently. We recorded an episode with Aaron Dodge, and right after we recorded that episode, like literally 4 days later, Dr. Kadira, who's a very sweet lady and a part of my Positive on Glucose support group, which is my Middle Eastern diabetes support group, she passed away from dead in bed syndrome. And she left behind an 11-month-old baby and a husband. And she was a doctor. She was someone who contributed to the community. She was aware of all the things that could happen when you have hypoglycemia. Like it was truly an accident. And it just makes you think, like, first of all, we all don't get to live forever, right? So I'm just grateful that I got to experience her, and Allah yarhamah, like may Allah rest her soul. But at the same time, it really just brings it into perspective. Like, what can I do so that it's not me?
Yeah. Well, and I think there are ultimately there's really nothing you can do, right? Like you said, it's a tough balance. We really are injecting ourselves with a small liquid that just a little bit too much could mean the end of us. And I think that's the thing we don't talk about very much because it's scary and it's uncomfortable. I have a story that I'll tell you off the pod. I don't want to reveal it now because one of my old clients actually had a situation where he was almost murdered by someone trying to give him insulin while he was asleep. And so I'm hoping to get him on the podcast just to talk about that, because that is crazy. And I think a lot of us would be interested in it. So sorry to tease that without any real information. But for me, I wanted to share a story of when I heard of dead in the bed syndrome for the first time outside of the doctor's office, because I think they go over it with you when you're a kid at Children's in Dallas. They have like a full day of diabetes education. And I feel like it was in one of the pamphlets. So I had heard it before, but I had a mutual friend in college, and I think that her sister actually listens to the podcast or has listened to it at some point. So if you're listening out there, this is you. But I had just gotten my insulin pump approved, and so I was actually required to wear it on my belt clip, but unhooked, which in hindsight, without a CGM, like seems really stupid. But they were just trying to get me comfortable with the technology and like using the carb calculator and all that stuff. So she saw it and she was like, oh my God, I will never let my kid have an insulin pump because of dead in the bed syndrome. And, you know, at the time, insulin pumps didn't connect to CGM. So they didn't know when your blood sugar was low. So no matter what your blood sugar was, they were going to continue to give you the programmed amounts of basal, which is, I think, one of the unspoken benefits of hybrid closed loop and looping therapy is that if your blood sugar is going down, the algorithms stop giving you insulin, which is a huge life hack. Very, very nice. So you know, she was like, I'm not going to let my kid wear a pump. And like, obviously me on day one of my pump, I don't recommend like telling someone that, like, cause I'm a little bit of you guys know me, I'm a little bit of an alpha male. I was very much an alpha male at age 19. And I didn't want to be told what to do or what was going to happen to me. And I was, kind of a control freak like that. But so I kind of like bristled inside. I was like, oh, that's terrible. That's terrible. Like, why are you telling me this? Was very committed to not letting my pump kill me. So very glad that I made good on that promise. But anyway, all that to say, hypo unawareness. Let's talk a little bit about it. You deal with it more than I do, I think. But at the same time, I kind of have this really weird relationship with hypos that now that I have a CGM, I feel like I feel them less than I did before because I can see the number and like I trust the number and it's like, oh, that's how I feel. But I'm still very hypo aware relative to the rest of the diabetes population. But you
remember
and many other people with diabetes who've lived with it for many years experience extreme hypo unawareness at times.
Remember when we did the, like, I think this is 2 episodes back, or like the last time we did the mailbag, and you were like, Eritrea, what's your blood sugar? And I was like, okay, thirsty. I think it's like 210. And I looked at it, and my blood sugar was like 98, 2 arrows down. So like I am extremely hypo unaware. I don't know why. It also really sucks because I won't really feel it until it's like kind of too late. So Gvoke is my life forever. But yeah, hypoawareness is really not fun. It can be really scary, and people should be prepared for it at all times. But that's also why I have my alarms on my pump and on my CGM. And if they're annoying, I don't care because they keep me alive. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's always the dichotomy between the alarms, is that I want them to let me know when I'm in trouble, and I also want to sleep. So it's just the tough pull, the tough struggle there. As I was kind of Googling around preparing for this episode, like I said, guys, I've been really on my stuff. I found this website from Diabetes UK called hypoprogram.com, and it's a free program that's built to help you and people around you gain hypo awareness. I was looking at it. It's not like a system to like get you to where you can feel your lows, but it's really just an educational system for you and people around you, for you to tell them what a low blood sugar looks like and what it feels like. And I think this is a really great transition into our next topic of conversation, because you sent me yesterday, Eritrea, a TikTok,
Girl.
which, you know, again, we're talking about hard stuff today. I so wish that I could send this TikTok to my dear friend Tom Shear, who has passed away, because it's all the things that he loves. It's gay excellence, first of all,
Yeah.
and B, it's a hilarious story that's terrifying about a night out with diabetes, and a group of friends who take some edibles. They don't really say what kind, but they take some
But his
drugs.
friends didn't know what to do. Like that was okay. So like TLDR, start from the very beginning, Rob.
Yeah. So we were watching this TikTok, and he tells a story about him and his friends going to a concert or a party and taking some edibles prior. And their friend with diabetes, during the as the edibles are hitting, as they're on the train on their way to this show in a new city for the first time,
New York.
in New York, for the first time, which if you've never been to New York, riding the subway is like, it's a rite of passage, and you have to get used to it. It's very different and can be very confusing. There's a ton of trains. So especially if you're on edibles. And again, I'm not advocating the use of drugs, but I am talking about it because I know people use drugs, especially now that edibles are legal in the United States in many places, marijuana edibles. So I think this is a really great conversation to talk about how to talk to your friends about your diabetes. And I'll use myself as an example as well. And B, really from a safety perspective, I don't care if you have diabetes or not. If there's any chance that you will have a medical emergency and you are planning to take drugs, you need to have somebody there who can be your spotter, who can be your guide, who can be your Gandalf on the way to Rivendell, so to speak. Somebody who has been there before and knows what to look for. Because I think this TikTok, while it's really funny and the format is very silly, it's a true story that many of you who are listening have for sure experienced something like, where you're around all your friends, you do not have a way to treat a low blood sugar, and you are rapidly losing consciousness. So we're going to link that in the show notes. Please check it out. It's really funny. Comment a story on it, because I think it's really important that when we, as the diabetes community, can encounter these videos that are reaching tons of people, millions of people have liked this video. So really, this video, they've done more for this video's done more for hypo awareness and like awareness of the symptoms of diabetes than almost all of the other nonprofits and side projects and Diabetics Doing Things combined, because of the way that they did it. So go watch the TikTok, and here are my tips.
Wait, you have to tell them the person lived. For all the people living with anxiety, like myself, Jesus, you have to let them know.
I didn't want to spoil. I didn't want to spoil the TikTok. But yes, they lived. Thankfully, they lived. So go watch the TikTok, and also shout out to good friends. Shout out to good friends who are really, trying their best in a tough situation. So I'll tell you what my parents told my friends. I was diagnosed at 16. You guys know that. So I had this close group of friends. I'm still close with many of them today. And my parents just basically made it their duty that whenever my friends were coming over to hang out with me and we were leaving, they would like take one of them aside and be like, okay, Rob has diabetes now. if he's ever passed out, you stick him in the leg with this. And they showed him the GEK glucagon kit. And they were
The
like,
red one,
the red box, which are actually getting discontinued at the end of the year. So more
so
to come
long.
on that. We've got some cool content coming out on the podcast actually about that. So more to come on that soon. But so have the conversation with your friends of what to do in an emergency. Talk about the symptoms of low blood sugar, of hypoglycemia. It'll be really quick. And guess what? They will know. They will definitely know when you're having a low blood sugar incident. I need to pause really quick because my phone CGM alarm just made a noise and that usually stops the recording. So hang on one second. So talking about the symptoms, one of my training partners when I was playing basketball was named Dwight Coleman. And he could always tell, he said, because my eyes would move weird, he could always tell when I was about to have a low blood sugar during a workout. And it's also really apparent because you get way more sweaty than you probably should be, but in a workout that can be confusing. But I also go really pale. So go over the symptoms with your friends. And again, I'm going to say it one more time. I'm not advocating for the use of drugs, but if you are going to take any kind of hallucinogen or any kind of drug,
Or be drinking.
Or drinking or alcohol, please have a person there who is your spotter. They don't have to necessarily be sober, but we all know that friend in the friend group who's the most responsible. Please. And sometimes the people with diabetes are that person. So make sure that if you're going to Vegas or if you're going out on the town and you're going to make some, let's not call them bad decisions, but you're questionable. These guys in this TikTok that we watched are basically thinking they're going to have the best night of their lives. And it was quickly turned the other way. So just remember, having those conversations could save your life and also allow you to have the night that you were planning on having. If one of these guys in that video had a glucagon kit or a Gvoke hypopen or even a Bascini or whatever, it would have made that TikTok way less interesting, but it would have made their night a whole lot better. And I think that they would have really appreciated having that.
Having a scary low can be scary. I had a scary low in Miami, and I had that conversation with the person who was with me beforehand, what to do, what to say. So preparation is key. Everyone around you knowing, or just your spotter knowing, also so important. And I think that's the thing with diabetes though, is prep.
Be prepared. Be prepared. Even
Stay
for the
vigilant.
uncomfortable stuff. Stay vigilant. You are the watcher on the wall. It's like the Night's Watch.
Oh my God.
The Night's Watch pledge. Guys, I'm sorry, guys. I've been digging into Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones and Star Wars.
House of the Dragon has been.
Oh my gosh. It's just nerding me out on levels that I'm uncomfortable even discussing on this podcast. So let's move to the next piece.
But speaking of nerding out, so the next piece is very nerdy to me, I think. We've had a series of guests on that I'm really excited for. Some episodes are already out, but our misdiagnosis series with Felissa, Dex Gerald, Kylene, I know we have a few more coming, but it's been really interesting to talk to the community members who were recently or who were originally diagnosed as type 2 and are now LADA or type 1. It's wild.
It's crazy, and it's happening in Black and brown communities at a rampant rate. And we've talked about that on all of the episodes. A fun thing that's like a positive to all this negativity that's happening is one of the guys in my basketball group that I play with on Saturday, who I've been playing with for really like 3 or 4 years, besides the COVID times, the early COVID times. Nate was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. I didn't realize that. And he was misdiagnosed. So the other day, he like picked up his shirt and he has one of those like insulin patches that you can like inject 2 units at a time if you squeeze it.
The little thingy, yeah.
And it was right next to his Dexcom, and I was like, Nate, what do you got there? Like, what's going on? And he was like, yeah, I used to have type 2 diabetes, but apparently I was type 1. And I was like, dude, you're like reading my mind right now. So we're gonna do an episode with Nate as well, just because. When you meet me and you're my real friend and you have diabetes, you get on the pod. That's just those are the rules.
Also, but what a life experience, and why does this keep happening? Like, it makes me, I don't know, it makes me feel like I have rabies or something, because it's just so infuriating that people who look like me just get dismissed. I know it happens to Caucasian people and Asian people also, but the fact that we've now done 3 guests, like, oh my God, now 4, like. It's just a lot. I'm so sick of racism, and I'm tired, Rob.
Yeah. And, every now and then, again, I go revisit a book called The Lessons of History. And there's a entire section on race and history. And I was just reading about, anyway, all that to say, all of these things are inexorably linked. And, if a overweight person over the age of 25 with black or brown skin comes into the doctor's office, please, if you're listening out there, just test them for the antibodies. It's really simple, really straightforward, and will help.
Why can't we test everyone for the antibodies? Why can't we just test everyone? Like, I don't get it. It's not going to, you're already taking the blood. So that's my new thing. I'm just going to wear a t-shirt. It's like, test everyone for antibodies. Like,
why not? What is the downside? What, a little bit of a wasted test. Like a doctor hasn't wasted a patient's time before. Come on. I
want to say something about people who have asked for the antibody test. And if you've been denied the antibody test, please ask your doctor to notate that in your chart. More than likely, they will give you the test because they don't want to put in there that they told you no. So if you're someone who's asking your doctor for something and your doctor refuses to give it to you and you really, really think that there's something wrong, ask them to notate the refusal in the chart and then try to get a second opinion. Usually that will help. I read that online and it's really helped me. So there you go.
There you have it. Talk to your doctor. Okay, so the next piece, we're going to talk a little bit about the creator series. We've done a couple of episodes. We're going to continue to do that. And again, I think it's probably just going to become a long-term vertical of ours. I did a founder series a few years ago, and I also am a founder and a creator, so I like to talk to people about their process. So one of our first episodes that went live recently was with the CEO of Swoon and co-founder of Swoon, Jen. And we had a couple of comments, and so I want to shout out Chris Wilson, who had messaged me or had added us on Twitter, and is a listener of the pod. So thank you so much for listening. And he had some reactions and responses to some of the conversations around sugar and sugar causing diabetes. And I want to make sure that we clear that up, because full stop, sugar does not cause diabetes in type 1, type 2, whatever. That is the facts. However, we want to make sure that we don't say that sugar is good for you. Because sugar is unequivocally bad. So that's not to say that I don't eat it. I do. I'm a human. So I'm going to have some sugar from time to time. So I'm going to add a disclaimer to that episode that says, hey, sugar doesn't cause diabetes. We'll have all the science in that disclaimer. But also, we want to create space for people who want to be mindful of the sugar that they're drinking and not sacrifice flavor. So I want to make sure that people who listen to that, if you heard it and it made you uncomfortable or you wanted to say something, Chris did the hard thing and he reached out to us and said that we need to take a look at it, and we have. And so be on the lookout if you want to re-listen to that episode in the next couple of weeks, that there will be a disclaimer on it. The other thing I want to ask you guys, and this is another reason for this episode, to try to get a little bit more interactive with you guys again on the podcast. And I want to know what creators you guys actually want to hear from. So we have some really good ones coming up. Amy Shea, Type 1 Amy, who is the uncrowned Reels queen of Instagram, although there's a couple of other amazing creators that we'll bring in as well. But she's certainly one of my favorite Reels creators. And we've done an interview with her already, and we've got a few awesome names on that list. So if there's somebody specific you want to hear from, please reach out to either Eritrea or myself. And those are our first names at diabeticsdoingthings.com, and drop us a note. I'm interested mostly to see who listens to this episode and actually emails us. So this is your chance. If you want to email us, do it. I won't ask you all the time. So please email us.
Perfect. We've had some really great creators on in the past. We're going to have some good ones. Amy is just one of them. I know Charisse is coming back. I'm so excited from Steffi from Germany and Pep Me Up Diabetes blog. So bring me some international guests, guys. Do my job for me, please.
Have you met Steffi in person?
Yeah, I have.
Okay. I got to meet her last week in Sweden. It was pretty awesome.
Look at you with your casual, I was in Sweden, humble brag.
I know. Gross. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about more about that in a minute. Right now, though, this next segment is about you, and you are on Mounjaro.
Is that how you say it?
I don't know. I was going to ask you how to say it, but I'm
Mounjaro.
You think? Maybe.
Mangiaro.
Yeah. Grazie. Yeah. So please don't come for us Italian listeners. We're sorry. Mounjaro. Yeah. So
let's talk about it.
What is it?
All right.
I can read the definition. It's an injectable prescription medicine that is used along with diet and exercise to improve blood sugar in adults with type 2 diabetes. It is not known if Mounjaro can be used in people who have inflammation of the pancreas, pancreatitis, and it is not for use with people in type 1 diabetes. So we're going to talk about this too, using these types of medicines off label at your doctor's recommendation. And it's also not known if Mounjaro is safe and effective for use in children under 18 years of age. So because I'm Mr. Compliance, now that I've worked with all these brands, I've got to read that important safety information. So now that the important safety information is out of the way, you are using Mounjaro.
Here's the tea. Here's what had happened. Okay. So I started a fitness journey at the beginning of starting working at Diabetics Doing Things because it was a pandemic, right? And I started going to the gym and like eating healthy and running and doing all these things. And I just felt like my body wasn't responding the right way. Like I just felt like I wasn't getting the results that I needed. And also, there are only so many times after a hard gym session that I can sit in my car and have low blood sugar and cry while I drink 3 juice boxes and eat all the calories that I just worked off before having like some more types of mental problems. So I paired with that, like with the weight loss not happening and with having a really stressful summer, I was talking to my endocrinologist and I was just kind of telling her, you know, my A1C is a 7.3 right now. That's the highest it's been in 2 years since the last time I told you I had a 7 point something. My weight's not going down. I don't really know what to do. Thoughts? And she was like, well, would you like to try a tirzepatide drug? And I was like, is it going to make my heart like beat really fast? Because I don't like things like that. I already have anxiety. And she said no. She recommended Ozempic or Mounjaro. Apparently, TikTok has sold out Ozempic. It's like gone, as well as some other thing called Wegovy. So she was like, let's try Mounjaro. It's very expensive. I had to use a coupon thing to get it. I ended up paying like $100 for it, but I think originally it was like $700 or $800 for 4 doses. I took the first dose last Sunday. It has been one of the toughest weeks ever. My diabetes is 92% in range. Like I have had maybe one low, no highs, and like perfect blood sugars. But being able to eat a meal has been a real struggle. I've kind of been surviving on oatmeal and protein shakes because that's all I can really stomach right now. And staying really, really hydrated because I hear from my friends in the community, shout out Kendall, the sweet librarian, shout out Julie Heverly, that staying hydrated is like the most important thing you can do while you're taking tirzepatide. Otherwise, you will feel like absolute garbage. The first 2 days were really bad. Like I'm sorry, but I threw up a lot. Like it just sucked. It just sucked. But now I'm a lot better and I am really anxious to take the second dose tonight. Like, I don't know, should I do it? Should I not? It's kind of how I feel. Because that first day was so tough that I'm like, man, I don't even need to lose weight like that. Cause I'm not someone whose goal was really just like weight loss, weight loss, weight loss. Would it be nice to lose 3 or 4 pounds? I'm a 30-year-old woman. Of course. Do I need to in order to like live my life? I don't think so. But my A1C is really bugging me. So I just feel like I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place right now, kind of. But yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing and being so vulnerable about it. I know that there's a lot of people who are curious about tirzepatide or have had conversations with their doctors about it. So I'm hopeful for you that the second dose goes a little bit more smoothly, and I know you'll keep us updated on the pod as we continue forward. But
absolutely,
yeah, that's what we're here to do. And I think it's another good point. Like anytime we recommend a product to you, it's something that we use. And by no means was this a recommendation of a tirzepatide, but we're talking about living with diabetes as real people and the results that come along with it. So if I'm pushing a product to you, whether that's Gvoke, whether that's Medtronic, whether that's Mankind or Afrezza, I use that product and I like it. I would never BS you guys. And I hope that I think, real listeners of the pod and real fans know that I wouldn't do that, but also, there's a lot of stuff going on. And, so if there's anything that you're like, Rob, I don't know about this, please comment on it, message me. I want to make sure that I'm continuing to build trust with you guys. So
I think that it's really important before we move on to talk about how like I didn't know how sick I was going to get before I took the medication. So when we talk about the meds that we take, and this is not a recommendation of Mounjaro, like I want to make that perfectly clear. This is my experience and the journey that I'm on right now and what I'm going through. But I think it's really interesting that most of my support came from outside of my doctor's office. Like, I didn't know that the reason that I was so nauseous on Monday was because I was dehydrated, until Julie Heverly and Kendall were like, hey, like, this is what you need to do. And this is how I take my Manjaro. And here are some tips. So I think that you and I are trying to provide a perspective of people who have access to these things, so that if you want to try it, talk to your doctor and go on your own journey. But this is our journey, and we're just sharing it so that people can have a little bit more information. Because it's crazy that my doctor didn't tell me, like, hey, make sure you drink a ton of water the day before, or do this or do that. So that's just my 2 cents on perspective.
No, I it's very important. And again, thank you for sharing it. I'm interested to continue to see how it goes. I hope, and what people like Kendall and others who I've known in the community who have taken tirzepatides of different brand names, I'm hopeful that it gets better for you as you stay on it. Now, you mentioned that Ozempic is sold out because of TikTok, and there's some Kardashian stuff in there as well. Some rumors are swirling.
I heard about that. Did you hear about that?
Yes, I did hear about it, because friend of the pod, Zoe Witt, actually wrote an op-ed, an opinion piece for Glamour Mag. And so we will link that in the show notes, because it is, Ozempic is not approved for pre-diabetes. It is only FDA approved for type 2. So it's really interesting to see a lot of the misinformation that's flowing around, but we have creators and writers with diabetes who are out there setting the record straight. So I will link to that in these show notes as well.
I love her. I love Zoe. Shout out Zoe.
All right, let's talk about my current diabetes stack, my current health protocols, and my current supplements, habits, and routines that I'm using, not only to manage my diabetes, but just to manage me as a human and manage myself. So this is at the time of recording. It's the end of September in 2022. So if you're listening to this sometime in the future, maybe these are out of date and I'm not using them anymore, but you never know. Be sure to ask me. So for diabetes, I've had type 1 diabetes. It'll be 18 years on January 1st. So coming up on 18 years. For 15 of those years, I was on an insulin pump. I will go back to an insulin pump therapy. I identify as an insulin pumper. But this summer, I took a break because we've talked about on this podcast, I had a lot of lipohypertrophy, which is what we call scar tissue from insulin injections under the skin. And I was attributing those to the usage of my infusion sets. And I honestly didn't rotate them enough. And I also started a new insulin. The insulin was Lumjev. I was like, what is
the
name?
weird one that I haven't tried. Yeah.
I tried Lumjev, which is a Lilly product and is a rapid acting insulin similar to a Fiasp. And it has a burn at times because part of the chemical compounds to make it work faster cause a burn. And so I was using it and it was causing more scar tissue. I'm talking like 2x at least the scar tissue and the lipohypertrophy of the previous insulins that I was using. And I wasn't super concerned about it, but over time it caused a lot of inflammation. And so I wanted to take a break so that I could give my sites time to heal. And I'm happy to report after about 3 months of being on multiple daily injections on the InPen, which is amazing, is a smart insulin pen from Medtronic. And my lipohypertrophy is healing. My inflammation has reduced drastically. So I'm very excited to get back on the pump therapy. Probably before the end of this year, you guys will know that I'm back on the pump. So
will you go back on Lumjev? Sorry to interrupt. Will you go back on Lumjev? Like, will you?
I'm glad you asked that because I will not go back on Lumjev. I'm currently using Humalog. My body responds well to it. I've used it for almost the entire time.
Me too. I love Humalog.
It works great. It's all reliable. And from a ratio perspective, it's the same as Lumjev. Lumjev is just a little bit faster. So I see no problem with continuing to use Humalog, and I'm going to use it in the pump to limit that inflammation.
I knew you were a psycho, but I just can't imagine you being like, okay, I'm in a basal 5 units, and then just like, it burns. Like, what the hell?
Well, It's really annoying, honestly. But I did get over it. And it's not all the time. It's usually like on a news site, you'll typically get a little bit of Lyumjev burn. But again, it's just the aggregate compound effects. And I think that's a big part of diabetes as well. It's just like, it's not just 1 month. It's not just 6 months. It's forever. So got to be sure to take care of yourself. I'm also using the CGM I'm wearing is Medtronic's Guardian Connect system. So the standalone CGM from Medtronic. My glucometer is by One Drop. I've used them for going on 6 years now, and they also support that. This is not a sponsored piece. I'm not a spokesperson or anything like that, but they do give me those test strips for free. And it's also a non-insurance option. I was finding a lot of trouble with previous test strips getting covered by different insurances, and it was just a big pain in the butt. So not only do they have a cool looking glucometer, but you can buy the strips with cash. It's pretty simple. And they also have some cool tech coming out. A company also owned by a person and run by a person who lives with diabetes. So cool stuff there. And I'm also using, and I announced a partnership with Mankind, but I also use Afrezza. And I want to focus on the idea of the diabetes toolkit, because I got questions from people asking about, well, you're on injections now. Are you only using Afrezza for mealtime insulin? And my answer to that is no. My breakdown of when I use Humalog versus when I use Afrezza is about 90-10. I really only use Afrezza for high blood sugars that I want to come down fast because I want that instant gratification. Or if I'm on a flight or in a meeting and I'm sitting down, because if I'm immobile, my injectable insulin takes a little bit longer to hit. And I want that. I'm very insulin sensitive. I've worked really hard to maintain that. I want to keep it. And when I have to sit there and my blood sugar stays I'm sitting in that chair in a long meeting, or I'm on a long flight and my blood sugar stays high, I hate hyperglycemia. It makes me really cranky and ornery. So I try to get out of that range as quickly as I can. And so that's what I use Afrezza for. So high carb meals, high blood sugars, that is my addition to the diabetes toolkit. And I want to talk about this because access is really important to me. And that is the focus of my partnership with Mankind and Afrezza, is talking to HCPs about providing to people who are on injectable insulin or who are on insulin pumps an additional ultra rapid acting insulin for these types of situations. So I was talking with a very well-known clinician and researcher. I won't name his name, but at EASD, and he was telling me about some products, and I was like, wow, this is really impactful. And I asked him a question. He goes, Rob, you need to remember that these products are not made for people like you. And I was like, well, that's so interesting. Like, what do you mean? He goes, no matter what product you use, you're going to optimize it to work the best for you and your diabetes. You have different goals and different expectations of this technology than an average patient. He said, but when a person who has either been disengaged with their diabetes, who the physician has named as non-compliant, when they get on this technology, their outcomes are so significant that we have to make it work for the general population first. He's like, so yeah, I understand that you want a diabetes toolkit. I understand that you want all of these things. Whatever options you have, you're going to make the best of. And so we don't really worry about you. And so it was kind of interesting to kind of reframe. We talk a lot about people who listen to this podcast. People in the diabetes online community are in the 1% at the top of the pyramid of awareness and understanding of products and like what they do. And there's even like a hierarchy within that. So if you feel like a product, like you're so good at managing your diabetes that a new product or a solution is kind of like throwing a wrench in your system, just remember it's for somebody who doesn't even have a system. And to make their life managing diabetes easier. So that was a really interesting thing.
In your cool toolkit, don't forget your Gvoke.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I do have carry Gvoke with me. I have it in my bedside table. I have it in my travel kit. I have the HypoPen, so I keep it around. I keep that thing on me. That's my Gvoke joke. I keep that thing on me because you never know. You might just be your blood sugar can go low at a moment's notice. Okay, so shifting gears into supplements and tech. Right now, I'm actually in this really interesting phase with supplements. I've taken a lot of them over the years. I've talked about some of them on this podcast. I am a podcaster. I listen to podcasts. I've done a lot of podcasts. So I've heard a ton of Athletic Greens ads, and I get the ads all over social media. My friends have done the ads on the podcast I listen to. They're always there. And I was like, okay, whatever. Athletic Greens this, Athletic Greens that. And I was previously taking a different type of green supplement, a different brand of it. But when that subscription ran out, I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to reward Athletic Greens and I'm going to start taking it. And I have to say, I take it 1 to 2 times daily and it is amazing. It is like the gut health and metabolic health. It's good for hydration. I use it for immunity health. And, for recently, I've been traveling a lot. So just to give you guys an idea, Erica and I left Hawaii on Monday night. So we had a red eye to Dallas. We landed in Dallas Tuesday morning, and then we had another red eye to London on Friday night. So from Monday, I went to sleep Monday night on a plane leaving Hawaii, and I woke up Sunday morning in Sweden, and I had Dallas in the middle. So we were traveling a lot, and that's hard on your body. So, and also, the pandemic is still going. So we're really concerned about making sure not only that we're healthy, but we're able to meet these demands of our travel schedule. And I had to be my best self. So I was like, I'm going to take my Athletic Greens. And it really did help. My whoop recovery, all of that, I can tell is impacted by the greens. So highly recommend.
Okay, so okay, I guess I got to get some greens in my life now because I traveled so much. I didn't even know I was supposed to be doing this stuff, Rob.
That's why I'm telling you, because most people don't. Like flying on an airplane. I have to tell, like, as much as we're used to it, humans were not designed to do that. And the pressure and the recycled oxygen, it's just bad for you. Plus the time zones, don't even count the jet lag. All that stuff is really difficult. Athletic Greens is my number one tool for fighting that. The next thing I take every day is Thorne Super EPA. And it's like omega-3s and DHA. I listened to the Huberman Lab. I'm going to tell you the podcast I listened to later. He was talking about what he thought was the best natural supplement for mental health was DHA. And he recommended Thorne Super EPA. And so that's what I take. I get it on Amazon, and I take 2 capsules every day. Along with my levothyroxine in the morning. So you guys know I have hypothyroidism. So I take the once daily levothyroxine. I also take the Thorne Super EPA. Those and that with the Athletic Greens are my supplement stack as of September 2022. The most important supplement that you can get for your life is sleep. It's the best nootropic, so enhancer of brain activity. It's the best antidepressant. It's the best recovery mix. And I have had a chili pad from that I heard about on Tim Ferriss's podcast maybe 5 years ago. I bought one in 2019 and I've used it for the past few years, but recently Erica wanted to get one on her side of the bed as well. So we upgraded to the 8 Sleep mattress topper. And I thought that my sleep couldn't get better, but I was wrong. 8 Sleep
the
mattress
chili
topper is
pad,
unbelievable.
it's the thing that keeps you cold, right? That's what you said, because you get really hot, or I don't know. Explain.
So sleep is really interesting when it comes to heat, and you'll need to listen to the Huberman Lab or another expert to really dig into it. But sleep is all about temperature. 2 hours before you wake up, your body reaches its temperature minimum for the day. And so in order to get deep sleep, you need to get cold. And so as your body cools down, you feel hot, but your body's cooling down. So that's an interesting thing. Like when you're in the sauna, your body is fighting to cool itself. When I'm in the cold tub, my body is fighting to warm itself. So there's a lot of different kind of like thinking about how your body works. It's an amazing machine. But at night, if you're waking up constantly sweaty or you wake up in the middle of the night and you're like, wow, I'm just not in the right rhythm, I would look into it. It's expensive, certainly. But again, I'm a psychopath and I love to have that cold water. I sleep with really cold. And honestly, while Eric and I are traveling, we were staying in nice places and just wishing that we had our 8 Sleep. We hated sleeping in the hotel beds because I was waking up in a pool of sweat like every single night.
Weird.
Yeah.
I wake up really sweaty. I never knew this information. I didn't know. I'm also like a cold person like throughout the day. So that's interesting. And I definitely will look into it because my sleep, I'm sorry, I'm going to say my sleep is fucked. Like it is terrible. I definitely don't get enough sleep. So that's why we do such a good job on this podcast, Rob, because you are the absolute opposite of me.
Well, I have failed you, and that's why I'm doing this. I failed you by not making you one of my disciples. Your sleep will be healed. I'm like, we're going to make this happen.
Oh my gosh.
How do I know about all this? How do I know how these things affect my body? I'm wearing the Whoop 4.0. I've worn a Whoop. I'm now a like level 27 Whoop member, which I think puts me in pretty rare territory, like almost 800 recoveries I've tracked through the Whoop. Last year, about this time, I decided to take a Whoop break because I was kind of overwhelmed with diabetes data, with workout data, with all this stuff. And like all my workout consistency went through the floor. The Whoop helps me sleep better. It helps me work out better. It's everything that I need from a tracking standpoint. And I've worn it for a long time. And I really trust it, and I really enjoy seeing the data and insights. I've learned so much. The worst thing for my recovery is alcohol. The second worst thing
Yeah.
is dehydration. If I'm dehydrated, third thing, flying on planes, all of those things are going to have a negative impact on my recovery. So guess what? I basically stopped doing everything except travel. I don't really drink anymore. I basically only drink on guys' trips. And you know, I try to stay as hydrated as I can. I start the day with a big glass of water and a big thing of athletic greens just to get myself on the good foot. And then traveling back to the athletic greens, like I now know I drink athletic greens before I take off. I drink one when I land. I'm really doing the work to try to make sure that my body can recover from my demanding schedule. So as we talk about routines, so we've talked about diabetes tech and medication. We've talked about supplements and technology. Now routines. This is where the rubber meets the road. Sleep is my foundation. I'm making an effort to go to sleep earlier so that I can wake earlier. Huge shout out to the Huberman Lab. I'm going to send Eritrea a bunch of Huberman Lab episodes after this to
I
talk
listen
about.
to it sometimes, but then they just make me feel stupid because I'm like, I'm not
It,
as cool as you guys.
It's very scientific, but he has some really amazing episodes on sleep and circadian rhythm, sunlight in the morning, mental health. Again, I'm doing all of this stuff because I struggle too. I'm just trying to put myself in the best position to meet the demands of my life and my crazy schedule and my ambitious goals. So sleep is my foundation. I've actually found that going to bed a little bit earlier and but also forcing myself to wake earlier, if I can get the sunlight in my eyes, even that, it eliminates a lot of jet lag. So that's what I recommend. Sunlight in your eyes in the morning, sunlight in your eyes during sunset, and then go to bed. Once you get in that bed, make it dark, put a sleep mask on if you have to, and find a way to protect your sleep.
How many
Defend it.
hours? How many
For
hours do
me,
we need?
everybody's a little bit different. Typically 7 to 9 is the number. For me, it's a little bit in the middle. I don't feel better after I sleep more than 8 hours anymore. And sometimes I feel better if I'm around 6 to 7. So it just really depends on what I need. But occasionally I will go to bed earlier. I think sleeping later really throws me off. So I'll have to go to bed earlier if I need extra recovery. So again, the routine, sleep's the foundation. Sunlight in the early morning. That's the way that I overcame jet lag in Hawaii and in Sweden. I was up in the morning getting that sunlight in my eyes. Your body knows what to do when the sun comes up. That's literally what powered us for thousands of years prior to technology, prior to alarm clocks. Hydration. Got to stay hydrated with water. Got to drink water. That's a really, really important aspect, not only for mental health and just performance, but also for your diabetes. You guys all know when you're going through that checklist and your blood sugar is high, like do some squats, drink some water. Like the reason that your blood sugar responds in kind is because your body needs water to process insulin and keep yourself moving. A thing that I've been doing recently, again, because of the Huberman Lab, is I have stopped drinking caffeine until I've been awake for 90 minutes. So what I've learned is that the way caffeine, it like basically whatever the chemical reaction is in your brain, if you have it too close to your wake time, you'll have your afternoon crash. And so then that causes me to drink more coffee in the afternoon, which then affects my sleep. And it's sort of a compound effect. So I have worked really the last 3 weeks. And again, like a lot of vacation, a lot of time to reset, to wait to have my coffee until I've been awake for 90 minutes. Sometimes I don't do this. I don't do this literally every day. Like some days I just got to have that coffee right away. But 60 to 90 minutes is the recommendation. And if you can make it the full 90, I find that I drink less coffee throughout the day and that I don't have that afternoon crash.
Was it hard at the beginning? Like, did you have to like mentally be like, okay, because I'm one of those people when I wake up, I have to have coffee because I'm just like, oh, I can't even talk to anybody.
I think that's the self-talk is like, if once you recognize it, you can say, okay, do I really have to have the coffee, or can I try to get moving and wait? What if I waited? And so I think that's the question that I try to ask is like, can I wait? Do I have enough time? Do I have enough slack in my morning schedule? Because that's also the time where like nobody's really trying to get a hold of you. I know you like to work out too. So there's like differences there. So I don't know. Again, it's an individual basis, but I have found great results thus far from from waiting a little bit until I have caffeine. Okay, going in next, because this is taking forever. I exercise 5 to 6 times a week. 2 to 3 times a week, I play high level intense basketball for at least an hour in a league or in my Saturday run. And that's like very demanding, very difficult, but I love to do it. So that is a huge part of it. I also will lift weights 2 to 4 times a week. I kind of consider my life like in season right now. Like when I was in high school and college, like I'm kind of playing enough basketball that I can consider that in season. So I'm working my weightlifting around my basketball. And so I end up doing that about 2 to 4 times a week. I find that if I don't do that, then I can't play my basketball because I won't recover. My body won't recover, or I'll get like a tweak or an injury. So weights is really the gateway for me to be able to play basketball, which I love doing. So, and I don't want to be bad at it. Like I hate being bad at stuff. So especially things that I'm good at. So that's, I call that weight training kind of mindset microdosing. And I got that from my friend Corey Schlesinger, who's the strength coach for the Phoenix Suns. And he exercises that with his NBA athletes. So I'm trying to do that as well. And I also play golf 1 to 2 times a week. So, just again, getting outside, getting active. You guys saw my silly reel about nature. I love being in nature. I love exploring and playing around. I'm a big nerd and a big kid. So I got to get outside. I got to be playing my sports. Got to be doing my stuff.
Nature. That was the funniest TikTok or real thing that you've ever, I died. But also, you just do so much stuff, Rob.
I do. I'm a psycho. So you don't have to do all this stuff. But again, the stuff that's good for you, I'm doing, and you don't have to if you don't want to, but I just know that I'm out here doing it. Speaking of my cold immersion tank, I have a cold tank at my house and I get in it 6 times a week. All the research says that you only need 10 to 12 minutes a week aggregate. So that's 2 minutes at a time, 6 days a week, 12 minutes, right? Typically I'll sit in there a little bit longer, but I often don't go over 5 minutes in the tub because that thing is cold and I don't have to. The research says it's only 10 to 15 minutes. So I'm not out here trying to like outdo myself. This morning,
series. I want to talks from the tub, because that talk you gave this morning from your Insta stories, you were in so much pain.
Yeah, my voice is so funny in the cold tub because I'm freezing cold. It's very, very tough. So talks from the cold tub has always been by design. What I found is that I'm not in there as long as I thought I was going to be, and it's way harder to talk. So cool stuff coming hopefully there. Speaking of talk, I do talk therapy twice a month. I've seen my therapist for now 3 years. I started going to couples therapy with Erica, but prior to when we got married, or really prior to when we got engaged. And that was really beneficial. And in that time, I discovered my own personal need for a consistent talk therapist. So shout out Michelle, my therapist. She's amazing. And we've done a lot of work together over the past 3 years. And then, when you're like, Rob, you work out a lot, like, and you do your microdosing workouts or whatever, what kind of stuff are you doing? Well, I do a lot of unilateral exercise, which is like single leg. So when you think of like a squat versus a lunge, I'm doing more lunging because of my ankle surgeries and because of just bad habits of lifting and also being a very tall person, my body can like compensate for itself. So I don't often get like the same reps and the same balance on both sides. And a good fix for that is to just do single leg and make sure that you're tracking the reps the same amount on each side. So I do a lot of single leg stuff. If you want some accounts on Instagram to follow that I really enjoy and have changed the way that I think about training and the way I think about mobility, and are the reason that I'm able to get buckets at an extremely high level that I continue to do. Stronger by Science, that's Max Schmarzo's account, really great. Schles Strength, that's Corey Schlesinger, again, my buddy from USOC days. Highly recommend following him. Mr. Do It Moving is an MBA trainer and a movement specialist, really great account. And then Vernon Griffith, his account is basically like, what if a defensive end was a yogi? It's a lot of like hip mobility, ankle mobility, knee work, rotational stuff. I've taken a couple of his courses and really, really, really good stuff, and has made me a better athlete and has elongated my career by a long, long time. So definitely check those out if you want. And you're like, okay, Rob, you listen to a lot of podcasts. What podcasts do you listen to? I listen to Huberman Lab. I listen to the Ryan Russillo podcast. That's like sports and pop culture. Really love that podcast. The Rewatchables from The Ringer. is a movie podcast that I really enjoy. And I've also been listening to more Rich Roll podcasts lately. I've also tried to adapt my persona to be a little bit more like Rich Roll as I get older and as I kind of continue to become more comfortable with my place in content creation and social media. I think he's a really cool voice and has a really chill vibe that I also really vibe with. So those are what I typically listen to. It's the off season for basketball. During the season, I'll listen to the Bill Simmons podcast, the Old Man and the Three, which is JJ Redick's podcast. So if I'm driving, I'm listening to pods. And of course, Diabetics Doing Things. I definitely have to listen to this so I know that I'm not just rambling about who knows what all the time.
What a stack. Like we have like a list of it here, and it's such a long list of things that Rob does. But I mean, it must be hard to be the hardest working guy in diabetes. You really want to be Dwayne The Rock Johnson so bad, dude. Like
I do. This was introduced to me at a very early age in my life and kind of like spoken over my life was that I think Aristotle or Socrates said like excellence therefore is not an act, but a habit. And so that's where I really dig into and nerd out over like, what are the things that are going to make me successful? If I do them, then I'm already successful. I don't even have to do anything else. And so setting yourself up for success, I think is a huge part of not only a life with diabetes, but just, living the life that you want to live in general.
that's a good one. Take away from this: excellence is a habit.
Yeah, it's not a one-time thing. You're gonna have to wake up tomorrow and slay the dragon one more time. Okay, so the last segment that I want to talk about is who is Rob Howe influencing and why. So, like you said, I'm doing a lot of stuff. I have been traveling. I've been whether it's diabetes conferences or going on vacation or doing a zine or doing the North Texas Food Bank collaboration or working with startups and working in advertising. Like, what am I doing and why? Well, my first current state of mind, I think, is that the diabetes community is very small. And within that small space, there are a lot of people who kind of make up the different spokes in the wheel, so to speak. And I think that there's a place for everyone. I really do. But at the same time, I understand that there may be different people, different media, different experiences, like different platforms that some people vibe with other than others. So for me, I think that our audience that we've built over the past 7 years really vibes with what we do and really supports our causes and really champions the outlook that we have for people with diabetes and the respect that we have for people with diabetes. And at the same time, I think that there are people who don't. And what I'm here to say is that is okay. I think that there is someone for everyone, but that for me and what I've learned over the past few years is that there are going to be things that I do, that ideologies that I have, just the way that I am, that rubs people the wrong way. And I do not take that personally. It's just the way that things are. So what I'm doing is trying to be an example and trying to be thoughtful about the people with diabetes that I represent. And whether that's through partnerships, whether that's through campaigns, whether that's through products, I'm keeping that in mind all along. And if you are a true fan of this podcast or of me, I am grateful for you. And I want to continue to evolve and to continue to explore and continue to find those things that brought you here in the first place and continue to deliver them. So that's where I'm at. And if you don't want that or you aren't supportive of it and it doesn't vibe with you, that's fine. I'm sad to see you go, but good luck. And I think also I'm open to feedback. I think we talked earlier about Chris, who had emailed or tweeted that he thought there was a problem with an episode. I appreciated that. A, it told me that someone was listening, and B, it told me that there, was something that we missed, and we need to really make sure that when we're putting something out there, it represents the people with diabetes that we represent. So we're going to continue to do that. Now, with that in mind, I've got a lot of partnerships going on. Part of my place in this space always has been I think, as a leader. That's just who I am. That's my personality. Sometimes that makes me look like an F1 driver. It's like, oh, this is a guy with a jacket with a bunch of brands on it. And it's like, yeah, in a lot of ways, that is me. I'm an athlete and a sponsored athlete for the most part, and a sponsored athlete with diabetes. And that is part of it. What I try to do with those for-profit companies is really evaluate the partnership and what they want from it and what they're trying to do, and make sure that it represents you guys, the people who are my audience. But not only that, it represents myself. So I think coming out of Europe, it's really different than the United States, like especially from a diabetes conference perspective. There are nonprofits, for example, who vow to not take pharma money. And have been very vocal about that. T1 International, for example. There are other nonprofits in the U.S. specifically that do take pharma money and are criticized because people are dying because they cannot afford their insulin because of access. So where do we stand on that? My standing is we will not engage in a partnership. And if we are currently engaged in a partnership with a company that meets the following criteria, we will reevaluate and potentially dissolve that partnership with a brand with human rights violations and lawsuits about human rights currently. So if you are a brand, for example, Lilly Diabetes has a human rights violation and the Senate Judiciary Committee is investigating them, that is right there. Immediately, I cannot work with them because they have human rights violations. If you are oppressing people, whether they're in the workplace, it's a hostile workplace environment, or you are preventing people from getting your product for one reason or another, even if it's just the government's fault, it's not the manufacturers, which is, I think, a lot of people's perspective on that. It's okay. We don't have alignment. So that's what, that's the simple criteria. Yes or no, we won't work with you. So with that being said, the following brands we're currently partnering with on either a short-term or a long-term basis. Obviously, Medtronic Diabetes. You guys know I am the spokesperson for Medtronic Diabetes. That is something that I stand by and I believe in, not only from the products, but also from the culture. In 2020, during the heavy look at Black Lives Matter and in the wake of George Floyd, I was really afraid that I was like, I don't know if my partners are aligned with me in the way that I view these current political events and these current events about human rights. And I wanted to make sure that I was aligned. And so I got lucky because I think some things are just meant to be. The leadership at Medtronic is committed to opportunities for a diverse workplace to serve a diverse patient population. They're the only one of the device manufacturers that has funded research into underserved communities, Black and brown communities, to understand those disparities and try to address them. So that was really lucky for me when I encountered that, but I felt that shared alignment of values. And so we're going to continue to do work not only on the product side, like certainly pitching products is part of my spokesperson agreement, but also lifestyle and also inspirational content as well for other people who are out there who need to know about insulin pumps and who need to know about CGMs, and hopefully I can make a difference for them in that way. Now, outside of that, there's a couple pharmaceutical relationships that we have. So when you talk about Mankind was founded by Al Mann, who also founded MiniMed. He invented the first insulin pump and was acquired by Medtronic like 40 years ago. Al is no longer with us. He passed away a few years ago, but his companies were built to make the lives of people with diabetes better. And I think that his mission and people who were associated with him always talked about it was the person with diabetes was at the center of it. And so they are a pharmaceutical company, but that's why I said no human rights violations, then yes, we can work together. So Afrezza is, I just talked about it in my stack. A big problem with it is that it's hard to get. And it's not because of cost necessarily, because Afrezza and Mankind have great patient savings programs that can allow you to get it for less than the list price of even the analog insulins, which is great. But if your insurance won't cover it and your doctor doesn't know about it, it can be very difficult for you to get access to it. So that's a big part of my partnership with Mankind, is talking to HCPs, telling them how to arm their patients with the information for the prior authorization, for asking and telling stories for people who use insulin pumps and people who want another piece of technology in their diabetes toolkit to help them with high blood sugars at night, or high blood sugars, in times where they're very sedentary, or eating high carb meals just to, get that dopamine hit from that slice of chocolate cake without all the aftermath of blood sugars. So those types of stories are what I'm sharing with HCPs on the backside of things. You guys won't see that, but when I'm going to an event with Mankind, that's why I'm there. The next one is Gvoke. I've worked with them for a long time. You guys have probably seen some of my content before or heard me talk about it. Eritrea uses it as a patient. I also use it in a non-paid capacity, but the GEK kits are currently being discontinued. So we're going to be doing some sponsored podcast episodes and some sponsored content on social media about the GK is discontinued. What are your options? And talk about Gvoke HypoPen and my personal experience. It is the first glucagon that I used. I had not used it before. And again, I had good results. It took my blood sugar up. I didn't have any of the side effects, even though there are potential side effects. So I did want to say that something that was really scary to me prior to trying Gvoke HypoPen was the use of glucagon. There were a lot of unknowns, and working with them and working with the community, very similar to what Eritrea was saying about Mounjaro, is talking with people who had used glucagon really helped me be confident enough to use it. And so I have an opportunity to be that for somebody else. I'm going to take it. And I think the other thing is all of this stuff doesn't just come to me to enrich my life. If you guys catch me on a yacht not giving back to people and not helping people, slap me silly. Call my mom and tell her to get on my
It will
ass.
catch you, bro. I will stick my foot so far up your ass, it'll come out your mouth. Like, nah.
Yeah, accountability is important. So why are we engaging in these partnerships? What are we doing with it? Well, like we talked about earlier, Diabetics Doing Things is changing. We are going to give more opportunities for people with diabetes to earn money. Nothing makes me more hyped from a business perspective than to give somebody with diabetes money for their art, for their passion, for their work. So I'm going to be creating opportunities to give more people like us opportunities to get paid by these companies to make the stuff that they make. So hold me accountable to that too. I'll be telling that story till I'm blue in the face, but I just want you guys to know that is what's behind these partnerships. And I have personal relationships with all of these people behind these brands, and we are aligned in our values. We know, they know where we stand, and they know who we represent. And guess what? They want to work with us and create opportunities for people with diabetes. So we're going to continue to do that. And it's also opened up some opportunities, like this North Texas Food Bank collaboration has opened an opportunity for us to help older people with diabetes, to help seniors with diabetes. We talked about it earlier in the episode, but that's something that I haven't spent a whole lot of time thinking about because I've been making my little content and making my nature TikToks and all this stuff. And we've been focused on tech and focused on new media, but there are seniors with diabetes who need our help, and we're going to focus on helping them as well. So I really hope that you guys are going to see and notice that Diabetics Doing Things is becoming a new kind of diabetes media company that's paying people with diabetes to make their art, that is using and entering in partnerships in a thoughtful, respectful, and sustainable way, and ultimately is just trying to make people with diabetes life a little bit easier, a little bit more entertaining, and a little bit better overall.
Wow. I mean, I want to close out the episode, but it's just, you said that now. So it's just so beautiful. This has been a really long one. If you've listened to this entire thing, first of all, you get a medal. But secondly, I just appreciate us being able to do these updates with the listeners, because I know that this is information that even if one person took something away from, it's a win.
I also just think like build in public, being transparent about what we're doing and why. I want to give you guys more time. You've given me a lot of your time over the years, and it's been a difficult year for me, a very challenging year for me professionally and personally. And the good news is I'm coming out of it. What if that plateau that you're on is a foundation? I heard Robin Arzon, our type 1 sister, Peloton instructor and VP, who I honestly am terrified of and do not vibe with most of the time, except for around diabetes. Because she has diabetes, I've listened to her stuff. She's very inspirational. And I heard her say that, like, what if this plateau was a platform? And I just felt that at the right time. I heard it at the right time on Rich Roll's podcast. And so if you're going through it right now, I hear you, I see you, I've been there very recently. And just keep your head down, just keep putting one foot in front of the other and trust that your hard work will pay off. And I'm here for you. So again, email us. If you like this episode, shoot us a note. I want to hear from you. And with that, I'll see you guys next time on these amazing episodes that we have coming up with amazing people with diabetes from all over the world. See you guys soon.
Bye.